Now, let's get started. And I want to start off with this quote from Carol Dweck. She's the author of a book called Mindset. She's been researching mindset for many, many years. She wrote more books, but Mindset, let's say, is the most famous. And really, she tried to understand how our beliefs, our attitude towards learning really affect our performance. And I chose this quote from her book, which says that we like to think of our champions as superheroes who have like different characteristics, who are born different from us. And we really don't like to think of them as really just ordinary people who made themselves extraordinary. The mindset can really be a powerful tool, to really shape the way we do things and to shape the career we want. But sometimes we're stuck thinking, that, maybe, we don't have talent, or we were not born with certain skills and so on. So we kind of get a little bit lazy with our personal development. And really the first thing I wanted to do today was really just to, make sure that we don't fall into that mistake and really realize that whoever extraordinary we have in our lives or we admire and so on became extraordinary thanks to hard work and really a good mindset. It doesn't matter where you are at now, you can change your mindset, and you can build the career that you want and that you deserve. So I want to start off talking about some of the challenges that we face as business developers. And really the first thing, I think it's something that most of the business developers we talk to, it's really the loneliness of business development. No, I would put here this quote, like sometimes business developers are really seen as a one-man show or lonely wolf, which is something I experienced myself as well when I was working in different companies. I was always the only business developer, and I was a bit suffering from that. And then we will see how that can affect our mindset as well. What we found out was a series of challenges that can really, affect the mindset. It can really hinder the success as a business developers. Most of these challenges really had to do with managers, or like with the company that the people were working in. Many managers, unfortunately, are not the greatest at understanding what business developers are really doing. Sometimes they don't really coach them, they don't train them properly, they don't really know what business development is. Because of that, they tend to create like some very unrealistic goals, they put a lot of pressure, and sometimes there is also, let's say, a bit of an old-fashioned culture that can really affect the way business development is made or the way how business developers are seen. But at the end of the day, these are really external factors, right? And I mean, we cannot choose our managers, we cannot necessarily change the way they perceive us all the time. So how can we do it? It would be really miserable if we're working as business developers and we feel like we cannot change things. We're really stuck in this situation and we don't have basically any control over these external factors. But really the key was the mindset. And it was really saying like, okay, but are there some things, that successful business developers do that make them successful, right? So how do they cope with these challenges? How do they cope with these managers that don't understand them? How can they be successful in companies in which maybe other business developers are not? Now, of course, all these things that we talked about so far, so all these challenges, they do have a huge impact on our mindset, right? Because of course, it affects our motivation. Because we're not motivated, then we also don't persevere in our tasks. We just give up at some point because we feel there isn't really a point in doing them. Worst, it impacts our confidence. And of course, when we see that there is an impact on our confidence, at that point, it's not even only about our job anymore. It really gets under our skin. So we might start doubting ourselves in general as professionals and maybe as individuals. And obviously, all these things impact our efficiency. If we're not motivated, if we don't persevere, if we're not confident in what we're doing, it becomes extremely difficult to become efficient business developers. Then how can we do to change this, to be more motivated, to be more, to persevere more, and really just to build like successful careers where we can really split, our professional life from our individual life and really just be efficient BD pros? some concepts in business, they're always taken for granted. For example, when we talk about mindset, we always say, yeah, okay, it's the way you think, you know, or something like that. So I always like to start from the basics. So what is really mindset? So a mindset is a set of beliefs that shape how we make sense of the world around ourselves, right? And of course, it influences how we think, how we feel, and how we behave in any given situation. Now, of course, because it's a set of belief, which usually we create, it also means that we should be able to change these beliefs, right? So if we understand that there's some things that really trigger our effectiveness, our motivation, the way we do certain tasks and so on, in theory, we should be able to change them. And I say in theory, because yes, of course, it is possible, but to do that, you need to choose or to pick one type of mindset. And not all of us have the same type of mindset. There are two main types of mindset, a fixed mindset and the growth mindset. Now, when we're talking about the fixed mindset, a fixed mindset is really a mindset in which we think that everything we are, everything we do, all our skills, our characteristics, they're just there and they cannot be changed, right? So we're just in a certain way, we have or not certain talent or intelligence. So whatever happens is really a result of that. It's a result of something that is not under our control, right? So usually people with the fixed mindset, they really spend more time, you know, just to prove how intelligent and how talented they are in that specific domain, but they don't really explore their potential, they don't really explore their full self and so on. On the other hand, people with the growth mindset, they believe that, of course, we do have like some traits and so on and some like characteristics, but they don't define us and they definitely don't limit us. Instead, these people with the growth mindset, they actually have more, they believe that they have the capacity to learn and grow. Now, why it's important to know the difference? Because again, like, I think it's, of course, like very romantic, the idea of thinking that we're all like with the growth mindset, because to be fair, it is cooler. But sometimes we do have some fixed mindset, even if we think, you know, that we are in a growth mindset, or if for some things we have a growth mindset, maybe for some others we don't. For example, one thing that happened to me when I was working as a business developer was to really get fixated on my ideas. So for example, I would say, hey, you know, like there's this new trend, we should really be opening this channel because that's amazing, and we should be there, right? And then my manager would always say no, and then I would get so annoyed. I was like, but why it's always no, you know? So in my mind, I always felt like, yeah, I'm too smart, you know, I'm too far ahead, you know, they can't keep up with me. While the truth is that I was just really fixated on the fact that I was so smart, and I was just not able to understand what's like the needs of the companies were at that moment, whether we had the resources of doing those initiatives or not. Because really, the moment we accept, you know, that we can learn, the moment we start taking more risks, and we're really able to, you know, just put ourselves out there, that's really where we can make a difference, and we can really become valuable assets, because we're not busy saying like how or proving how smart we are. We're busy trying to add value to the company, meaning we're more open to listening to other people, we're more open to listening to the needs of the company, and overall we become more valuable. In a nutshell, so how could we define the growth mindset? So first, we really need to understand that the growth mindset can really motivate motivation and achievement. That's also the other thing. Motivation is not something that you have. Motivation is something that comes to you once you start doing something, once you switch your mindset and thinking, okay, you know what, like this task like seems really complicated, doing like working with this partner like seems impossible, doing this learning this new tool look complicated, but I know I can learn these things, I know I can become better, I know I can improve myself, I know that whatever I do anyways, I'm gonna learn something. So tomorrow I will be better than today. I want to learn. That becomes really your goal. You become learners. You are curious and you want to improve yourself. You also believe that if you put effort, you can actually achieve more. And it's not only about the talents you have. And when you have this thing, at the end of the day, what you're going to do is that you're just going to put more effort into what you do. When you put more effort, usually you tend to get more out of things. And that's really the first secret or the first difference between average business developers and highly successful business developers. Now that we know what is mindset, what are the different types of mindset and so on, it's time to dive a little bit deeper into the CLAP framework. And these are the 4 personality traits of successful business developers, which are creativity, learning agility, adaptability, and persistence. Why? Because these are more like, they're not necessarily like skills by itself. Like, of course, you can learn all these things. You can learn how to be adaptable. We have some tips on that. You can learn how to be more creative, how to be a better learner. But these things, they're more related to your mindset. It's really about like whether you want to be creative or like whether you read enough, for example, to have different thoughts to combine together. So let's see what are like really these things. And again, like with some basic definition, just to make sure we're all in there. So what is really creativity? When we're talking about creativity, we're talking about using our imagination to create something valuable. Now, one main job of business developers, of course, is to find new opportunities, right? So our job is to make sure that we keep innovating, that we keep our companies ahead of the competition, that we explore new channels and so on. Now, it becomes very difficult to do this if we're not a little bit creative. It's not about looking at things as they are and say, yeah, well, okay, but this is like this, you know. We always reach out to people only with cold calls. So that's how we do it. That works. So why should we change, right? So we really need to be to keep an open mind, use our imagination, but more than that, really connecting the dots. Because at the end of the day, and curiosity, for example, plays an important role in that, right? So how can we spot these opportunities? How can we use our imagination if we're not a little bit curious? If we don't ask ourselves questions, if we don't ask ourselves, okay, but how are these people doing, you know? Or like if we see someone really successful, like a competitor that is doing really great, you know, like you can get pissed and annoyed at them, or you can say, okay, but what are they doing, you know? And then you want to know what they're doing because maybe you can use this information. And really what it does is that helps you come up with new solutions to your challenges. And that's really important if you want to become a business development pro, right? So it's not only about, you know, doing your tasks, doing your calls, doing what you're required to do. If you want to grow, if you want to, of course, move forward, you need to do things differently. Second one is learning agility. Now, when we're talking about learning, it's not only about learning by itself, right? We can all learn something. We can learn a new language. We can learn how to cook. We can learn everything. But learning agility is a little bit more sophisticated as a concept, because it's not only about learning something, it's also about adapting to new changes. Learning agility is also about unlearning some things, right? Unlearning, especially in terms of our own habits, about our own, you know, limitations and so on. Like really learn to unlearn something that doesn't really work anymore. And the goal of doing that is to keep up with constantly changing conditions. And why it is important, because of course, business development is a field that goes really fast. And we really need to accept that, right? So we need to realize that innovation, technology, but also just simply people are changing. The behaviors of people, of customers, changes constantly. So if we're not just learning, if we're not there keeping up with what's going on around us, we're just not going to be able to take advantage of these trends. We're not going to be able to take advantage of the new things that are happening around us, which means we're not going to be able to innovate. We're not going to be able to find these opportunities that we always talk about. And we're basically just there stuck doing the same thing over and over again, which is demotivating, but on the long run is also not going to work anymore. The tendency I saw is that whenever a company got comfortable with one channel, for example, cold emails. There was also the time of LinkedIn cold outreach. There was a time of cold calling. There were many different times and so on. Most of the times when companies got comfortable with that specific channel, they just stopped exploring other ones. Not only they stopped exploring, but they also prevented their business developers from doing that, saying, look, this works, just do this, right? Which is the best way to kill a business developer's motivation, which maybe is like their careers, just wanting to try new things and so on. So don't do that. Just make sure that you keep learning and that you keep, first of all, improving yourself, and then, of course, improving your companies through all the things you learn about your markets, your industries, and so on. Now, we have adaptability, of course, the quality of being able to adjust to new conditions. I think probably the biggest event that happened in our lifetime so far was obviously the pandemic a couple of years ago, which to me, it seems already so far away. I'm happy about that. But of course, when that happened, it was like something really new for all of us, right? So how do we do this? Like, what does it mean for us? What do we have to do? Well, what that meant to business developers is that suddenly a lot of channels we gave for granted before were not there anymore. So we couldn't go to conferences, we couldn't do clients meetings, we couldn't do meetings in person with other colleagues, which meant like we lost some of the informations on the way and so on. So that was really a moment in which we really had to reinvent ourselves and really learn and so on. It's actually about understanding these new circumstances, right? It's about reading the room, reading the trends. It's really about developing the ability of like constantly being updated with what's going on. So if you do that before, so if you're creative and curious and then you learn and you're constantly learning, then ideally you should be able what's going on around you, so you should be the first one to adapt whenever new things happen. Being adaptable really helps you to adapt faster. You can take decisions faster. You don't get stuck with things thinking, oh my god, what am I going to do now? So it's really about taking advantage of the new opportunities as they come, right when they come, without wasting time and without this opportunity becoming useless. Basically, persistence is really about continuing doing something regardless of the difficulty or opposition. Now, I was talking to one of our students yesterday and I was like, hey, last time we talked about doing follow-ups. So did you change your follow-up process? It's like, yeah, I did a little bit, but, I feel like I'm always annoying and pushing. If I write too many follow-ups, I don't want to be annoying. Now, I know that this is a very common thing in business development, not only with the follow-ups, but sometimes also with, asking things to your manager. Like if you have a new idea that you really believe in, you don't want to ask your manager 10,000 times, because then you feel like you're being annoying and then maybe your manager doesn't like you anymore. Or it could be like, with the clients, for example, you don't want to send like too many follow-ups because then you feel you're annoying them and so on. Well, whenever you're giving up, you're definitely setting yourself up for failure. So do not do that. Make sure that you keep going and you just like keep with your tasks, with your processes, regardless of the difficulty or any issues you encounter on the way. Now, that doesn't mean that you should be like stalking people around. So that's not really about that, but it's more about, knowing the value of what you're doing and following your process. If you have a process in place that works, trust the process. Just make sure that you keep going. Why is that? Why it's so important? Because if you're not consistent in business development, you are for sure not going to get anything out of your activities. As a matter of fact, you're probably just going to have wasted a lot of time without really much in return. So really, you shouldn't give up too early. Of course, you should also not drag it too long, because sometimes us in business development are really good at hiding ourselves. I always say hiding ourselves behind one finger, which is usually the research finger. We like to research until the end of the day. We don't do that either. So we need to learn when to stop as well. But generally speaking, we need to keep persistence, because when we do that, then we have higher chances of success.